What's up, Internet? You're tuned into episode 14 of the FlipScreen Games podcast, a killer weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello.
Hello, Steve. I'm doing good. I'm doing great, in fact. I'm in a good mood. I've had a pretty good day. I am very excited to stream some motherfucking Mario Party Superstars with you and one Chewy Huerta later today. What was that?
I can't wait to beat you.
Well, I mean, we'll see what happens, you know. I'd love to brag and say that I'm going to win, but Mario Party is essentially a game of Russian roulette that Nintendo has digitized. So I could talk shit, but frankly, I'm happy to let the dice decide.
It's all good. I was told on my Shamu stream this week on Twitch that I had to gang up on you with Chewy and steal all your stars from Boo. So.
That's because I'm so good that you two need to team up against me is what I'm hearing, because I'm such a fucking supreme Mario Party player. So, you know, you want to team up against me, that's fine. You know, that's fine. It's duplicitous. It's frankly hurtful, but you know what? It's fine. I'll take it.
I think everyone realizes I'm such a bad gamer. I suck at every game I play. So I need all the assistance I can get, right?
But Chewy's like a ringer. He's good at everything. Oh, my God. Well, anyway, we've got a lot of show to get to, and that stream is fast approaching. So let's get into the business here. So let me remind you, fine folks, that this episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of November. Of course, this is not our first show in November, but it is our first show where we have our Patreon producers all lined up. So this is the first time you're hearing these folks. Thank you so much to Andy Radford, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, Waka Hula, and Zaid Ida. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we appreciate your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. Thank you for helping us keep these mics on. Like I said, we've got our Twitch stream for Mario Party Superstars, which by the time you're listening to this has already happened. But the archive is still available for you. And, of course, that is one of those fantastic little Patreon perks that you can get your grubby little mitts on. So if you want to catch the streams after they happen, we archive every single one of them on the YouTube channel just for patrons, as well as a bunch of other really cool things. Like you can go check out our podcast, One More Thing, where Steve and I keep the mics rolling and we talk about what's going on in our lives outside the world of video games. This week, we had a very, very odd discussion about what we would do if we rebooted our lives. Whether that meant starting our lives over at a certain age with the same knowledge we have now, or if we got put in witness protection program and had to go move to another nation and shave our heads and start our lives over. So if either of those things sounds interesting to you, which I guarantee it should. I'm not going to bury the lead. That podcast is great. If you haven't heard it before, if you've never backed us on Patreon, I genuinely think it is well worth your time and money. I think that show is so fun to record, so I hope you'll give it a shot and check it out. And, of course, if you want to be part of the show, remember that you can send us an email at questions@flipscreen.games. Head over to flipscreen.games, our website, where you can get links to our Discord or our Twitch. Great ways for you to keep the conversation with us going after the show has ended, to chat with the folks that you hear during, you know, the mailbag segment or during our talking points. You know, great way to come get involved, and it's a nice, fun, safe, inclusive community where you can come talk about video games. So no matter who you are, as long as you're a nice person, you're welcome there. So come check it out. Come chat with us. We'd love to hear from you. And I'm gonna issue the challenge again, right? If you're a long-time listener and you've never written in, write in. I want to hear from you. Let's hear your beautiful words. Come on. Or if you want to hear me read your beautiful words in my beautiful voice, great way to do so. So write in. We'd love to hear from you. So we're going to start things a little differently this week. We're going to jump into our talking point first. You know, no burying the lead. We're going to get right into the main topic right at the jump. Something new we're trying. Let us know how you feel about it at home. So, I think we briefly touched on this maybe last week or something like that, where we talked about how we were fast approaching the 1-year anniversary of, we keep calling them next-gen consoles, but now the current generation of consoles, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, both enjoying their birthdays in just a few days here. So we wanted to just kind of do a little retrospective, look back on the first year of both of these consoles, and talk a little bit about some of the games that have come out, how we feel about, just the state of the hardware right now, I guess, right? How are the services stacking up? How's the library looking? And I wanted to just kind of give both of them like a soft grade for the year, and then maybe we'll reevaluate next year and see how they've done once we're a little bit more in the swing of things, right? And, we likely see the PS4 and the Xbox One start to kind of sunset finally. So, I guess, Steve, let's start with you, because obviously I've got both of the consoles on day one. I've got lots of thoughts about both of them. Been a pretty vocal supporter of both of them. How are you feeling 1 year out from here, right? How do you feel about your Series X? How do you feel about the fact that you don't have a PS5?
I love my Series X. I think it was definitely the right console choice for me. Game Pass, I think, is the best deal ever in all of media.
Best deal in gaming.
I really do think that. I guess it's annoying that I can't get hold of a PS5. And I know I did manage to get one, and I sold it to my sister.
Fool.
But it is frustrating, and I think you'll hear those thoughts echoed in the comments as well. Like, a lot of people are sick and tired of scalpers, and a lot of people really just want to get their hands on these consoles. And obviously, it's all exacerbated by the chip shortage. And we know that both manufacturers are selling these in as records for their own consoles. They've both come out and said that. I guess looking at the list of games, it didn't dawn on me how few like new exclusives the Xbox had compared to PlayStation 5. I think that probably goes to show maybe their strategy, because even some of the ones in the Xbox list, like Forza Horizon 5, it's coming out on last gen. So is Halo Infinite coming out on last gen. So whether you consider those next gen titles or current gen titles, or if you're just considering them as cross-gen. But I guess the PlayStation's in that same boat, right? There's been a bunch of cross-gen titles. Yeah. We know Horizon Forbidden West is coming out.
People like to act like that's not a thing. That's always been a thing.
I know,
like, yeah. It's been a thing every console generation since the beginning of time. There's one or two actually exclusive. Okay, maybe not since the beginning of time. That's an exaggeration. But the last couple generations, there are the one or two, maybe more games that are actual exclusives, and then everything else is cross-gen because nobody has the new hardware yet. That's how these things go.
Yes, and it makes sense because you can't sell, like, you've got look at PlayStation, they've got over 100,000 PS4s. They're not going to forget all of those just to sell to the 13 million versus 100 million. It's like, it's crazy amount to just leave behind.
Yeah, if the game can run, why wouldn't you?
Yes,
it's just money on the table otherwise.
Yeah, and I know there was that whole thing with Jim Ryan's, and that they believed in generations, and they were going to leave it all behind, and yada yada yada, and people got up in arms about that. But I'm kind of, I guess I'm happy with where both of the consoles are. Yes, I don't have a PS5, but objectively, I can see that the hardware, in my opinion, is still lacking in places, and I think that's held back by their software. Things like VRR support, still not there. You still can't output to a 1440p monitor like you can on an Xbox. It's very strange, some of the omissions that they've got. Obviously, the expandable storage only launched like 2 months ago. Almost a year after its launch, they finally got the ability to add expandable storage, which was something Microsoft had there at launch. And in hindsight, maybe didn't need it at launch versus the PS5 probably did. So it's kind of strange. And we've already seen a hardware revision with the PS5. They've got that new version out in the wild with the updated heatsink inside that draws a little less power, which is it's strange that we've already seen a revision on these brand new consoles that no one can get their hands on.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of conversation about that, how that was probably less about efficiency and more about availability of parts, right?
Yeah, either availability of parts, and I've seen some speculation as well that it could just be to kind of reduce the costs, because obviously copper is very expensive compared to aluminium, and if it was over-engineered to the point where these games run exactly fine on both of them, then why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, I forget. I think it might have been Digital Foundry or one of those types of organizations who did a breakdown. And they're like, these don't really run differently at all. Like the difference is negligible, which I think led them to believe that it was not motivated by anything in particular. And it was just like, okay, this must be an availability thing. It'll make it easier to get PlayStations on shelves. And that's obviously a problem right now.
Yeah, because there was the report that they're flying them in at this point. They're not even coming by sea. They're flying the PlayStations, at least to Europe, from China so that they can get
That's
some on
wild.
shelves because they just can't get them over here in time.
And I will point out too, I think that's one of the things that I think is funny, and we'll probably talk about it more because I know we had a lot of folks write in for this segment, and I want to hear from some of them. But like kind of talking about like the limitations you brought up earlier, that the PlayStation 5 is breaking records. It's the fastest selling console in America right now, and I believe it's the fastest selling PlayStation. So I think it's really funny that everybody has like got behind this narrative that like there's not enough of them. They shouldn't have launched it. Like, nobody can get one. It's like, right. This was the same problem with the PS4. It was the same problem with the Switch. It was the same problem with the Xbox. This is how it goes, y'all. Like, gamers have such short memories. Like, look up an article from back then. I remember I spent over a year trying to get a Wii. I called every big box store in my town every day
Yeah.
for over a year to get my hands on a Wii. Like, this is what happens with new hardware, but it is what it is.
It does feel like it's gone on for a very long time, though, right?
I mean, I guess, like, sure, but
Over a year now that people have been trying to get these.
yeah, but I mean, I think
And
part of that is that there's a really high demand for them, right?
yes,
Is that like
high
people want them?
demand and low ability to produce them, because we saw the report that Nintendo's having to reduce the production of the OLED Switch by 20%
Right.
because they can't get the chips
Yeah.
to put in them, which is a problem across all industries. It's not just within the gaming sphere, but it still sucks. It still sucks that people can't get a hold of these consoles.
Stop buying
And there's a bunch
cryptocurrency,
of
everybody.
games. Yeah, that would be nice. And there's like a bunch of games stuck on that one console because obviously you can't even play some of them on PC at the moment anyway.
Oh, yeah, like the actual exclusive games on PS5, sure. Yeah, it's
Yeah, like Demon Souls and Sackboy and Astro's Playroom.
Ratchet.
You can't, yeah, and Ratchet, you can't play anywhere else. And Returnal, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah,
Is that on
that's true
PC
as well.
yet?
No. I don't
Okay.
I don't think Kina is either, actually. Is that on PC as well?
Yeah, Kina came out day and
Okay,
date on
okay.
PC.
That makes sense, actually, because they're a partner. They're not a first-party studio.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, it is what it is, right? Like, we talked all about exclusive software the last 2 weeks with regard to PlayStation, whether or not that's a good move or not. But I mean, I think having those games definitely sweetens the pot for people wanting to get a PS5 right now, right? Like, I think part of it is that, the PlayStation brand is just stronger than the Xbox brand, I think. Like, I think that, like, look at last generation, way more people owned a PS4 than an Xbox One, and I think most of those people are not interested in shopping around. They're like, I like PlayStation, I'll get the next PlayStation. And, like, it's that simple for them. Like, I
I
remember...
wonder though, like how many people are tied to games over consoles though? Like how
Yeah.
many people liked Skyrim and want the next Skyrim and they can't get that on the PlayStation, so they might actually pick a different console to play that, because I do think that's quite a lot of people. I mean,
Oh, for sure.
that's got to be one of the best selling games of all time at this point. They're about to re-release it again.
My question is, though, how many of those people are aware of that? Right? Like,
At the moment, not many, but I think the general person is aware of console exclusives. Like they know I can only play Halo on an Xbox, or I can
yes,
only play.
definitely.
But right now, I don't think they realize that
It's not
the
until that
next
announcement gets
Skyrim-
made,
Yeah,
right? Where they're like, Elder Scrolls only on Xbox. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
Mhm.
I think that's going to be the narrative for a lot of folks, because I bet you there's a big portion of people who like buy and play Bethesda games on PlayStation that are not aware that Xbox has purchased them.
Well, yeah, exactly, because they've just put a Bethesda game out as an exclusive on PlayStation.
They sure did. They sure did.
Did it
Steve.
say Xbox on there anywhere?
No, it didn't.
I guess because they're publishing their own games, right? It's a very weird thing.
Yeah.
Like they're Xbox and Bethesda still separate. But
Yeah,
still
right.
the
Like
same.
ZeniMax is still
Mhm.
the parent company of Bethesda, right? It's fucking weird how that corporations, man. I don't know. Let's hear from some of the listeners. This first one comes from Zaid, one of our Patreon producers, who said, "I got the PS5 on launch day, and I can't say enough good things about it. I haven't had any issues, and I loved all the games I've played on it. Long may it continue. In terms of the best gaming experience I've had on PS5, it's for sure Spider-Man Miles Morales. The pure thrill of swinging around in that game in performance mode, and just some of the scenic shots that can happen wowed me. It's still so far the best game to give me that next-gen feel."
Yeah, you can play it on last gen.
Yeah. Well, it does not. So what?
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine, but that's what I'm saying. I don't feel that I don't think at the moment we've had any game that's even come remotely close to tapping into the potential of these consoles.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, again, that's par for the course, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
go back and look at the PlayStation 4. What PlayStation 4 launch title was really tapping into the power of the PlayStation 4?
Knack 2, it was fantastic.
You fucking troll. Because I would argue that the only games that get the quote-unquote full potential out of a console are the last few that get
very
made.
last ones.
Right,
Yeah,
like The Last of Us
The
Part
Last
2.
of Us 2.
That's that's the full power of the PlayStation 4. Fuck yeah, it is. But yeah, that was because you had years in the making, years of being able to learn and get intimately familiar with the tech, right? Like, we're early days here. But I would argue, I think that the PS5 launch titles look more quote-unquote next gen than previous generations' new games have. I think that Ratchet Rift Apart feels like a bigger...
So you're calling that a launch title, even though it launched 9 months later?
Take it out of launch title. Launch window, right?
Uh-huh.
That's the first exclusive PS5 game that I played, was Ratchet and Clank. And that game, I think, feels like a bigger step forward as a quote-unquote next-gen title than the early first year's worth of PS4 games did. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. I mean, you look at it and you're just like, wow, this couldn't have happened on the last gen. Whereas I think some of those PS4 games, most of them or probably all of them, you were just like, yeah, this just looks like a nicer PS3 game, or this looks like a nicer Xbox 360 game. But I don't feel like this couldn't have been playable on that old console.
Yeah, I feel like it was the thing where, okay, this could have run on old hardware, but you would have cut corners, right? Like, you'd have less NPCs walking
fewer
around.
people, yeah.
You'd have,
less
longer
foliage.
load times, less foliage, like less sharp animations and things like that. All those things are true on PlayStation 5, but I think that people, especially folks who don't own one, really underestimate what a difference the SSD makes. And like those quicker load times, because even on a game like Ratchet, you have such little downtime, and I think that can't be overstated, how revolutionary that is, right? I think for me, even if there were literally 0 games that came out on the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5 that you could only play there, which for the Xbox Series X, there are actually 0 games that you can only play there. I don't think that matters.
Yeah, that's discounting any of those updates, or, I guess the games that were already coming out on last gen. Like, if you wanted to play Gears 5, for example, we didn't add it to the list of the games we were talking about,
right,
but it did get like an
Series
Xbox
X
Series
version.
X. Yeah.
Right. But that's my point, right? Is any of those games you can play on last gen hardware, right?
Yes.
And the reason I say that is not to sling shit. My point is that if you cut the 4 or 5 PlayStation 5 games that are exclusive, you can only play them on PS5, I would still argue that these upgrades are worth it. Because the quality of life, how much better the games run, how much faster they run, that is a night and day difference from the PS4 to the PS5 and the
100%.
Xbox One to the Series X.
I can't go back to 30 frames per second. I just can't do it.
Can't go back to 30 frames per second. Can't go back to waiting like 2 minutes for a fucking thing to load. I can't tell you. Like, that used to happen all the time, right? It was the thing we joked about, where it's like, loading screen, time to scroll through Twitter aimlessly for 5 minutes. Oh, the game's back, right? Like, that doesn't happen anymore. I don't go on my phone while I'm playing video games. I'm just there. I'm in it. And that immersion is, like, huge, I think that makes a huge difference.
Oh, yeah, I agree. That reminds me, I want to talk a little bit about some of the kind of next-gen features that were shown off, and kind of get your view on whether you think the consoles are going to commit to them, if you think they have committed to them, and how they kind of impact gameplay day to day. So
Real
both
quick,
of them.
before you do that, I want to just read this one more comment because I think it bookends what we were just talking about well, and then we have another comment that I think will get us into features well. So this next one comes from Wakahula, another one of our Patreon producers, who said, "The Series X is my first Xbox, and I definitely buy it again. I'll also stay in this ecosystem. Backwards compatible games, smart delivery, seamless cloud saves, and account sync, cloud gaming for trying out games, the list goes on. This is truly insane. I love how they treat Xbox like a platform for games and not just another gaming device anymore." So that's some of those features. And then I think this comment from Olaf is another good one to pull in. "To be fair, besides some games like Astro's Playroom and Ratchet and Clank, I haven't really seen the DualSense controller being fully utilized. The power of the PS5 has for sure been utilized by multiple games already. However, all the games that are the must-buys on the console, despite Ratchet, can be bought and played on PS4. I'm still happy that I got one at launch, but I would also be fine if I didn't, since a lot of the PS5 games are also available on PS4. However, being an early adopter is still super exciting, since you can experience all the features that are exclusive to the console. Yes, talking about the DualSense from day one, and there's nothing more fun than exploring brand new features from the first day."
Yeah, I would agree with that. I actually think some of the features that Wakahuma spoke about, they've been aside from smart delivery, like the cloud saves and account sync.
Smart delivery though is fucking incredible. Yeah.
It is really good.
That is such a S tier fucking new next gen feature.
Well, that I'm also putting in the same level as Quick Resume. I really think Quick Resume is kind of forgotten about on a day-to-day, at least by me. I just have taken it for granted that I can switch between games that my partner's been playing back to what I've been playing. It's back in exactly where I wanted it to be. And yeah, it's not perfect. Some games don't support it, but they've been slowly... Yeah, they've been slowly adding all the ones that weren't supported. They've added in the little folder so you can see which games are in Quick Resume. They've added a bunch of new stuff to that. And seemingly the latest new features from Xbox, we've got Dolby Vision Gaming, which is exclusive to Xbox, and the cloud stuff that I spoke about on last week's episode. That is a next gen thing, just being able to click play and the game loads instantly.
The Dolby stuff is that's cool or whatever, but that feels like a little bit more like a vanity thing because there's what is it, fucking 5% of people that actually have a television that can support that, right? Like we both have great TVs and I don't think either of ours supports it, right?
Mine does.
Oh, yours does. Okay, sorry,
looks
fucking
wonderful.
Richie Rich over here. And maybe mine does too, and I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. That's okay, cool. That's great. I don't know that I wouldn't put that on the same level as Quick Resume and cloud streaming.
No, it's not.
Those things are fucking game changers.
Of the list, Quick Resume's number one for me. And
1S.
Smart delivery is great when people buy into it. There has been the occasion where there's publishers and developers who've decided not to use smart delivery, which I think sucks. But I can see why, because they can charge more for the games or you can pay for an upgrade. That's the route Sony was going with their games. And it's really, though, changed the conversation. I think every time Sony was putting something out, it was have I got to pay for this? Is this a free update? Is there DLC?
Yeah.
How do I get this? Is this playing as a PS4
Xbox
game
is just
on the PS5?
Smart delivery.
Yeah, Xbox is just well, you buy it and you can play it and you just download and it works and you haven't got to worry about how you transfer your save from one version to another. The way you transfer your save from Death Stranding to Death Stranding Director's Cut is you have to do it within the game. You have to close out all of the missions or the deliveries you're currently doing, then pick up this new delivery and then take it somewhere else. It's cool. It's a quaint little thing, but it's just I just want to be able to open the game and have it work and pick up where I left off. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I definitely get that. So here, you know what? I'll jump into this next question too, or comment, I guess. This one comes from Griffin X, who wrote in and said, "If I'm someone who hasn't upgraded yet, the majority of the games I want to play are still playable on last-gen hardware. Ratchet and Clank is the one big standout that I can't play yet. Have you found it worthwhile being an early adopter? Are the new features like near zero load times and improved graphics been worth it? Do you think that they should have waited a while more to release them and with more consoles ready to go at launch? It's been a year and it's still hard to find them at MSRP." So I think this touches on a lot of these questions we've been kind of dancing around, right? Have I found it worthwhile being an early adopter? Yes, absolutely. I think if I was still playing on my PlayStation 4 at this point, I would be disappointed because I was starting to get frustrated by long load times and waiting and stuff like that while I was playing Persona last year or 2 years ago now, whatever it was. I guess both. New features like near zero load times and improved graphics, have they been worth it? Absolutely. Again,
Yeah.
I would have paid for these upgrades if that was all they were. Like if this was like another like 0.5 upgrade, I think I would have thought about it because it truly is like a night and day difference. And I think it makes me more inclined to want to play old games over. Like I replayed Horizon earlier this year when I was in between games, right? I replayed a little bit of Far Cry 3 when I was in between games. And a huge part of that is that it's easy. The games pick up and play and they load so fucking fast and they look better, like they play better. You know, like I feel like it really removes the barrier of entry between me and wanting to go back to things that, like I don't want to lug out my PS4 and deal with 3-minute load times. Like, no, not at all. But to replay those games here on the shiny new hardware, thank you very much. I will. And then, do you think they should have waited a while to release them in more consoles ready to go at launch? Absolutely not. This is an extremely privileged position because I have both of them and I got both of them at launch. But I'm continually frustrated by people who express that attitude. Because if you really want one and you can't get one, that's a really selfish position to be like, no one else should have one because I don't. And if you don't want one and you are one of those people who thinks that it's not worth it yet, then what difference does it make to you, right? Wait, get it when it's cheaper, or wait and get it when you can just walk into a Target or whatever, GameStop, and pull it off the shelf. God bless. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But for me, the effort that I put forward to get them, I feel like it was absolutely rewarded because I am having such a better time playing games because of these quality of life features and because I think the libraries have been legit, right? Like I have 3 Game of the Year contenders, or I guess 2 this year that are PS5 exclusive.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think I'm glad I got it at launch. My Xbox. Obviously, I didn't get PS5. I do kind of wonder whether if one of them had delayed it, whether they would have both delayed it, or if they were just kind of waiting for the first one to blink, because it kind of felt strange that they both announced the dates within the same week. It was like they're both basically coming out at the same time. And I kind of think if Microsoft was just like, yeah, we're launching in December or we're launching in January, I think Sony probably would have followed suit and was just like, yeah, we're going to do the same thing.
Maybe.
So I think it was hard for them to kind of try and figure out when they were going to launch. But I think the fact that they've sold everything they've made kind of goes to show that they probably launched at the right time. It's not like they had stock sitting around. It was they made a few million to launch with. You can't just store them all. You can't just, because how big's your warehouse going to be? You're going to have to store all of these and then ship them over.
And people are clearly hungry for it, right? Or they wouldn't still be selling out. Both of them. You can't get your hands on either of them. You have to actively be looking.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Series S. And that's strange. Like,
I have no concept of
next-gen console.
I have no concept of like what that is doing for the market. I really don't. I feel like they never talk about it. I have no concept of how many of them there are. Like,
me neither. And no one ever talks about it when they're coming in for a restock. It's just like, oh, they're restocking Xbox Series X and they're restocking PS5. No one's ever like, yeah, but I really want the Series S. That's the one I'm after. And I'm sure there are some people out there who have a Series S and absolutely adore it. Because if you're only playing on a 1080p screen, then fine. That's all you need, really.
I want to buy a Series S as like a second box just to stream with and stuff for convenience because I'm a lazy piece of shit. But otherwise, I don't. But
you literally have a PC that you stream from that could play every game that's on the Xbox.
So much work. I don't want to do that. Who wants to play games on PC? Gross. So this next one comes from Asobi. Who wrote it and said, here are my patented 3 questions now in tweet form. Pre-order now and get the secret 3.5th question. Appreciate that. Number 1, when can we start calling it current gen? Right now, today. It's now current gen consoles. It's here. We're here.
Yeah, it should have been current. It was current gen the moment they launched, and the moment I changed the Discord channel from next gen and split them out.
There we go.
So it's current gen and last gen.
Number 2. What is your opinion of this gen so far in comparison to the first year of other gens? So this is something I touched on before. I think it's good, really good. I think it's weird because like it's hard to like place the Nintendo Switch now because it's like they're on their own like
It's its own thing. You just have to forget it. I mean, the Wii U and the Wii pushed them off into a strange ass cycle that they've shifted onto for ages now.
But if for the sake of argument you want to just say like the Nintendo Switch is also part of this generation, I don't think there's been a better generation like year one launch cycle in my life. Like I think the first year of the Switch was immaculate. I think the first year of the PlayStation 5 and the Series X are both really strong. Like the Series X, obviously, you know, you can make an argument it's lacking in software, right? Like we haven't had like the Halos and, you know, some of those real heavy hitters yet, which I think
they are coming though. Like
they're around the corner.
Horizon's just got its reviews in.
Halo's out in a
5s and
month.
10s, and yeah, it was like crazy across the board for Forza. So I think that one's going to do really well for them.
Yeah,
and Halo, we loved what we played. The like trailer for the campaign looks incredible.
I think
that's going to do really well for them as well. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think that aside, I think it's been really strong. Like, you know, I think with Game Pass, with the level of services, just how much, like, I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but Guardians of the Galaxy, like, how much better a time I'm having playing it on Xbox. Yeah, I think they're hugely successful.
That was something I was really curious about as to what console people would pick to play it on. I asked Olaf in the Discord, was the DualSense enough for you to kind of consider that an upgrade alone? If you just say the DualSense is the only thing that was new, and personally I don't think a new controller would have been enough. They would have needed to have the SSD and the better graphics and blah 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 that we got with it. And I think at some point Microsoft's gonna come up with their competition to DualSense. But it seems like for you kind of just take it or leave it. You don't really seem to care. Like if you've picked to play Guardians of the Galaxy on Xbox, you obviously don't care all that much about DualSense. Otherwise, you probably would have gone for it there.
For me, it's about how it's being implemented. Like, I like the DualSense a lot, but I haven't seen third-party studios take advantage of it in a way that feels meaningful. Whereas, like, with Ratchet, with Spider-Man, you know, with Astro, those are games where I feel like it's really being taken advantage of, and it makes a big difference to me. So I think for that reason, I'm choosing to go with PlayStation where I feel like it makes sense. But I think in general for third-party stuff, Xbox is going to be my go-to because for a couple reasons, right? I mean, I think in general the Xbox loads a little bit quicker. Like I think it's a bit faster and it handles some of those high-pressure assets a little bit better. But also, right, like it's the whole thing of like, well, I know what Xbox's plan is moving forward for their library.
Yeah, next gen, you're getting these upgraded through smart delivery.
Yeah, so like, why wouldn't I continue to commit to that, right? Whereas, you know, I'm using my PlayStation more for its exclusives and for games where I feel like they have a better experience over there. So, I mean, I'm just kind of trying to pick and choose. And like, I played Mass Effect on Xbox, right? Because that was like, why wouldn't I, right? What's the reason?
Yeah, because it had the 120 frames per second mode, which the PlayStation 5 didn't get, and a bunch of other stuff. So,
which is great for me.
That makes sense.
It makes it easy for me to just, I'm going to play the game wherever it's the best experience, you know?
But at the moment, say you don't have either of them, I guess which console are you saying is the one to go for? Does it depend on, do you want exclusives, say, or if you want third-party titles? Like, say I only played like Ubisoft games.
Yeah.
Where am I getting that? Am I getting a Series X in your opinion, or a PS5?
I mean, if that's literally it, if that's all you play, then I guess an Xbox.
Yeah, I play 600 open world games from Tom Clancy every year.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it comes down to if you really want like hot exclusive titles, PlayStation's the way to go because any of the third-party stuff that you want to play will also be available there, and Sony has its, you know, walled garden of incredible first-party software that is always a Game of the Year contender. Is, you know, it's like these are big marquee titles, right? If you want to play them, that's the only place that you can play them. That's a really attractive deal. I think if you don't like that kind of game, like if you don't like third-person, story-driven, open-world action games, which is kind of Sony's bread and butter, and you're somebody who's like, like I kind of want to, I want that Game Pass life. I want to be, trying out indies here and there. I don't mind playing games when they're a few months or a few years old. Like, I'm somebody who's just trying to like get the most bang for my buck. Then I think the Xbox is a great solution.
Yeah, Game Pass is a really big one. I know you say that's their bread and butter, but it's really strange that that's the only kind of game that's omitted from this last year from Sony, right? We haven't got that narrative-driven third-person
Ratchet
game. That's a platformer. You can't really consider that the same as
it's pretty close. I mean, it's not open world, but I mean, it's still a third-person story-driven
Spider-Man's
action game.
That one. Yeah, Miles Morales as well.
Same deal. Right. I mean, shit, even Demon Souls, it's a third-person action game. Like,
yeah, okay.
It's different. It's
Demon
its own
Souls,
genre.
You're there for the narrative in Demon Souls. I don't think so.
But it's a third-person action game. That's still Sony's deal. So then number 3, about a year ago, me and Pete talked about Xbox's place in this generation. Did something change in Pete's opinion on Xbox? Steve, what's yours? I don't really feel like my opinion has changed a lot about Xbox. I think I've been pretty consistent about I praise them for the things that I think are praiseworthy. I think where I get critical about Xbox is when people draw a direct line of comparison between them and Sony and try to act like Xbox is better when Sony eats their fucking lunch consistently and has. At least this last generation, right? This generation, still all up in the air, right? Because anybody's game right now. And I think Xbox has a really good chance to pull away with it.
I do too, and I think you can kind of see that Sony's maybe a little bit scared of Xbox or Microsoft's strategy because of this whole PC stuff. They're jumping on that same bandwagon.
Yep.
And yet they don't have something like Game Pass to compete with.
The thing is, though, and again,
something like Game Pass to compete with.
This is where I bring it up, though. They don't need that. Like, Xbox needed Game Pass because Xbox was losing and eating shit. Right? And Game Pass is still not profitable. Game Pass can only exist because Microsoft is Xbox's parent company. And they make billions of dollars a year selling
just because it's not profitable right now doesn't mean it won't be. I mean, look at Netflix, for example. At the beginning, it wasn't profitable because they had to buy a shitload of stuff. Like they had to pay Disney to get Marvel on there.
Not disagreeing.
They don't have to do that anymore.
Not disagreeing.
They've got their own back library.
Right, but they have to spend billions of dollars to produce that. Right. And that's been my whole argument, right? Is that, yes, what Xbox is doing is pro-consumer. It's innovative. It's attractive. Will it ever make money? We'll see.
Yes, I absolutely think it will.
I think it will. I think it will too. I'm not betting against them. I bought an Xbox, right? Like I'm here. I'm here for Xbox. But Sony's strategy has worked for them quite well. And I wouldn't count them out.
I don't think anyone's counting them out, but I kind of think it looks a little bit like Blockbuster versus Netflix. And it kind of feels like unless Sony does something
but even that,
to go that way, it's like
this is exactly what I'm talking about.
You're going to get left behind.
Watch the Blockbuster documentary. The Blockbuster versus Netflix thing. Blockbuster didn't go out of business because Netflix was a better model and ate their lunch. That's factually not true. That's not why Blockbuster went under, but that's the common narrative. And this is the entire thing I'm talking about, right? Xbox gets all kinds of fun headlines. They're the underdog. They're the consumer friendly. Everybody loves Xbox. Everybody wants to pat Xbox on the back right now. That's great, right? I would be willing to bet that there are more PlayStation 5 sold and that there is a higher demand for PlayStation 5s. And I think that if the Xbox had sold a similar number, Microsoft would come out and be banging their drum about how well it's selling. And like,
no, I 100%
they're not.
agree with that. But that assumes their strategy is the same, which it totally isn't. Microsoft don't care about selling your box. They want.
Then why are they selling
Xbox
boxes though? Right? Like, I agree with you.
It's just one way to go. They want the Xbox app on TVs, on sticks, on a PC, on a phone.
You're right.
They just want the Xbox brand in front of anything, no matter what you use.
Yeah, and I totally agree. But I think that acting like it's not a competition and that there's no is totally disingenuous because it is a competition.
It's a competition.
Xbox
but
wants to sell more Xboxes than PlayStations. The fact that they have diversified their strategy, I think, is because they were unable to do that.
Last gen, yeah.
Yeah.
But like the last gen was, I genuinely think the last gen only went the way it did because of the mismanagement at the beginning of the generation. I mean, you look
Possibly.
at the 360, for example, that did phenomenally
It's
well
also
for
the
them.
library, though. Like the 360 had a better library.
Like, yes, but that's part of the mismanagement, right? The beginning of the last gen, you had a focus on TV. You could only buy the console with Kinect. They had to renege on that whole thing of you can't buy used games. There was the closure of so many studios. It was honestly ridiculous. And it took someone to come in and basically rescue it, because otherwise you would have never seen another Xbox again.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, that's the thing, right, is I totally believe in what Xbox is doing. I just also think what Sony and Nintendo are doing is working, right? I have a hard time thinking that Xbox
clearly
is going to run away with things, right? I think even if they do pull ahead, I think it's going to be a closer race than not, I guess. But we'll see. I think genuinely all three of them have very strong value propositions right now and are doing something unique and strong. So I feel like it's a good time to be an owner of all of them or any of them, frankly, you know?
Yeah, if I'm picking two, the Switch is always in there. And then it's just down to
what are your habits?
I play more of.
Yeah. What kind of games do you like? What do you care about, right? You care more about shooters and racing games than pick up an Xbox, right? You care more about single-player story games, pick up a PlayStation, you know?
Yeah, like I had my friend message me today after he saw the Forza stuff and was like, "This is the reason I want to get an Xbox."
Whereas like last generation, I don't think I could have made a single argument for why you should pick up an Xbox over a PlayStation, right? Not one. Very clear argument this time around. So if nothing else,
Sunset Overdrive was good, but yeah, it's not going to sell you a console, is it?
But even right, like even so, that's a huge win for Xbox. They've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. So I don't mean to be dismissive of them at all. I want to be clear about that. I think what Xbox is doing is very interesting. But I think it's worth pointing out that it would be impossible for them to do this if they didn't have a parent company that was worth billions and billions of dollars, regardless of if they ever make a cent.
I mean, that's the same as saying, like, it would have been impossible for them to get into the market in the first place, because unless they had billions and billions of dollars they were willing to burn. Because that first Xbox made them no fucking money.
Sure.
They lost so much money on that first Xbox. Same with probably the original PlayStation, right?
Yeah.
They bought their way into that market. Mm-hmm.
Right, but that's the thing, right? Is like they did, but now they don't. Now the business is PlayStation, and PlayStation requires PlayStation to be successful and profitable to continue moving, and Xbox can dump billions of dollars into a service and acquiring companies without any smell of profit, without even a whiff of profitability. And that's a privilege that they have in this conversation. Not that discounts them, just it's worth pointing out, right? Right now, mostly it's bought them goodwill. We'll see what that translates to in a couple of years.
Goodwill, and I would say a very, very nice stock price, which I'm sure they all are very, very happy about. They are the second richest company in the world.
I'm sure you're right. So we have a few more comments here about folks who were talking about delaying the consoles and everything like that. I think we kind of touched on that as a thing. Like I totally have sympathy for anybody who's trying to get their hands on one and can't right now. I just don't think it makes sense to delay it for that reason. This is par for the course. And as someone who has both of them, I'm really happy I have them. If they had been delayed a year, I think I would have been really disappointed. So, you know.
These all mention scalpers, though. And do you think there's something else that could have been done about scalpers? I know we brought it up on other things before. I just don't see that there is.
No.
Because of the retail structure and how they have to distribute through the network that they've already got. Like, if they were just doing what Steam did and selling it directly to consumers, 100% they could have just said it's one per PlayStation account or one per Xbox account. That's it. It gets delivered to you. But they can't just be like, fuck you, GameStop, fuck you, Amazon, we're going to sell it directly and you're not getting any money off of this console.
No, yeah, they can't do that, right? Like, they need their retail partners. Otherwise, they're shooting themselves in the foot. That's the way that most people buy consoles, is through a third party, right? I didn't buy either of my consoles directly from PlayStation or Xbox. So
I probably would have if I
I
had the
would
option.
have.
Like if the option was, like, I would have preferred to buy from them than go to Game or whatever.
But
Where,
I
yeah, I
mean,
went
that's
to
the thing,
Game
right?
for my
Is
console.
the average person doesn't think that way. So I think as long as that's the way that these things are manufactured and released, like, it just is what it is. So thanks everybody who wrote in. This is a really fun. Oh, excuse me. This is a really fun topic. I definitely think we could talk a little bit more about it, but I would really love to talk at least a little bit about my initial impressions of Guardians of the Galaxy before we got to close this out. So all the other games that we played this week we'll either talk about on Nintendo Noise or next week's show. But I do want to give a little bit of time to Guardians of the Galaxy. So I fucking love this game. I am so into it.
I'm gonna have to, when I edit this, I'm gonna have to go back and find the clip of you saying how concerned you were and had reservations about it.
Yeah, I did. I mean,
other.
that's fine. I don't. You know, I'm happy to admit when I'm
Like,
wrong.
what is it about it that has gripped you then?
So, oh my god, just like everything, honestly. Like, so I was looking at what the Metacritic score was for this game because when it came out, I saw like a lot of like good buzz, but I wasn't really keeping up with what the critical reception was. But I remember the conversation being like people seem to be in disagreement on whether it's like a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, right? And like I think for me, I would definitively say based on what I've experienced, it's in that 8.5 range probably. But for me, this is a really strong game of the year contender. Like, and it's a dark horse for me because I wasn't expecting that.
Wow.
Because it literally just checks my boxes. Right? Like when we've talked about like what are the things you like in video games, right? This is it. It's got them in spades for me, right? It's single player, story driven. It's got lots of like, you know, good cutscenes and all that kind of stuff. It's like that nice like story pace of like big gameplay chunk, bit of a story reveal, big gameplay chunk, bit of a story reveal. Love that pacing. We don't get games like that often anymore, and I miss them. I miss when games were a little bit more linear. And not all the time, but sometimes it's like nice. It's refreshing. It's a palate cleanser to not feel like, oh, like, should I have gone here? Oh, I have this giant map with all these boxes I need. No, it's like you just go and do the next thing. And then this chapter's over and now here's the next one. I think that that's like a lost art a little bit in gaming. And I appreciate that here. The cast is great. I mean, obviously the Guardians of the Galaxy are, you know, beloved characters at this point. We all know what they're about and everything. But I think this game does such a good job of like borrowing things from the film, from the comics, and making something fresh in the same way that Insomniac did with Spider-Man. And that was something I really praised Insomniac for with Spider-Man on PS4 was like, how do you take a character or characters with so much legacy and, you know, make them feel true to what we know those characters to be without just aping something else. And I think this game dances that tightrope really well because there are a lot of familiar things from the film that you'll see here, right? Like the use of music from that like 70s, 80s era, like that's here, right? It's more 80s. And even that they've injected some new things. Like they made Star-Lord, he was like a hair metal kid in the 80s, so like there's like some, you know, 80s metal and stuff like that you wouldn't necessarily have like seen in the movies. Stuff like Tears for Fears and a lot of good shit like that.
That's even better. That's the kind of music I like.
I love Tears for Fears. So it's like it's getting that same tone, like if you're familiar with the Guardians from the film, but it doesn't just feel like cheap MCU knockoff versions of those characters, which is what I was really afraid of. And like the art direction.
Is that how you kind of felt about Avengers?
Well, I didn't play Avengers because of the reception that it got, you know, because I was like, I don't like the only thing I want to play is the single player and I'm not going to spend $60
on Game Pass now. If you want
I could play it on Game Pass now. And part of me wants to just go back and experience the story and see like what that's like. But, from everything I've heard, that just is not a game that I'm interested in. Like this is what I wanted that game to be. I wanted a game where it was a single player story about the Avengers, not, You get 10 hours of that, and then it's a multiplayer MMO. Like, I don't like MMOs. I don't like service games like that, right? I want a story. I want relationships with characters that grow and change. I want dialogue choices where my choices actually impact how the story progresses. This game has all of that, and it does it really well. And the script is good. It's genuinely very funny. I feel like the chemistry between the characters and everything really works for me. And like really the only thing that I think I'm at all critical of, or that I feel like I've seen criticism of that I agree with, is that like the combat is like fine. It's not like great. It's not, the highlight of the experience, but it's good enough. Like it's constantly moving. It reminds me a lot of like Dragon Age Origins, where like you have, like you're controlling all the guardians at once. So it's a lot about like positioning and like being like, okay, like there's a bunch of these enemies and they're shooting projectiles at me, so I should use Groot's ability to lock them down. Or this enemy has a shield, so I should use Gamora's attack to take out the shield, and then I can follow up with Drax and it'll be dead. And like just the timing and managing the battlefield and everything like that is good enough. It's satisfying enough, but I wouldn't say it's the marquee reason to check out the game, right? To me, it's the art, it's the music, it's the characters, it's the script, it's the voice acting, it's all of those set dressings that are like the thing that's really striking a chord with me more than the moment to moment gameplay. But it's not bad, it's not like clunky or anything like that. I think it's maybe just a little repetitive. But that's one piece of the puzzle, right? And as somebody who really likes this kind of game, who likes Marvel, who, is into this universe, like all of the other things, all the other boxes it's checking are enough for me to forgive the fact that maybe the gameplay is not like a 10 out of 10 for me, But I think for this being the kind of game it is, I want more games like this. Yeah, I would play a game like this every year if it came out, right? It's appealing to me in the same way that like Final Fantasy VII was, of like, oh, it's this very like, tight character driven story, and like we're just going beat to beat, and like, yeah, there's little side things you can go off the beaten path, and you can find alternate outfits for the Guardians and collectibles and stuff like that. But really it's just like, hey, like here's point A, here's point B, here's point C. And there's something to be said for that, It's satisfying in the same way that like it was satisfying to go back to Mass Effect this year. This game has heavy, heavy Mass Effect vibes. And obviously it's in space or whatever. Take that out of the equation. It feels like an old BioWare game in a lot of ways. Maybe not as deep in terms of like the dialogue options, and the conversations are not that deep. Like, they're more contextualized in the story. Like you do talk to the people, like everybody else, like when you're back on the ship, and have those kinds of dialogues, and like you can make choices and like support one character or support another character, or you can make choices that'll piss one person off and make another person happy or whatever. So all of that's there, but there's less of that like, let's go back to the ship and have a deep conversation about your personal life, because the implication is that these characters already kind of know each other a little bit better. So
Yeah. I mean, I was watching some of the footage, and I actually get real Deus Ex vibes, which I guess makes sense considering it's from Eidos.
they actually
The way that
said it was based on that.
Oh, okay, because it goes into like you go into like the scan mode, and he was like scanning to like try and find the panel to open the door and stuff. Very much reminds me of playing Deus Ex, which I absolutely adored when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely has that pedigree, like that lineage to it. Yeah, I love this game. I really do. Like, and I don't disagree with like any of the non-aggressive criticisms that I've seen, right? Like I said, I think you can make the argument the combat's repetitive or whatever, but like this is an 8 out of 10 game that I love like it's a 10 out of 10, I feel like right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I was listening to Triple Click, Maddie Mars from Polygon was saying, I think her criticism of it was that was about the combat and how it felt repetitive, and she got a little bit annoyed by the characters always having something to say and her not really having any time to think because they've always literally got something to say. And Kirk and Jason were like, "Well, that sounds awesome. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I love the fact that there's always something to say." And
I like
and
that
she was
about
just like,
it.
"Yeah, she was like, I get it. People like it, but and I really want it. I really want to like this game, but I just can't." And I guess it really just depends on the kind of person you are as to whether you're into it. I
Yeah,
don't know. I've
fair
never
enough.
played. I've never watched Guardians of the Galaxy. Never read Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't really know anything about it, but does look like a good game. I'm probably not going to play it though because I've got so much else to play, and it's
Yeah.
not like it's up there with I don't know. Like, is this on the same level as Deathloop for you in terms of where it lands on your Game of the Year list?
I mean, it's
Or
up
Ratchet?
there. Like, yeah, it is. And I mean, it's not as good as those games, but I like it as much. If that makes sense, you know?
So like in your heart, it's a 10, but in your head, you know it's really not. It's like
Yeah, like if I was
like an 8.
reviewing this game, I would probably give it an 8, but like I like this game more than that. Just
Mhm.
because of what it is and how it's decided to be this, right? Like
Yeah, that's fine. Like I really love Mario Party games. Some people think they're trash, but you know,
those people are
I'd give
dumb.
it a 10 any
Whatever.
day.
But yeah, I mean that's where I'm at with it, right? Where like I don't think it's a 9 out of 10. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10, but like if your
It gets an
sensibilities
81 on Metacritic, which sounds like it's probably
That's
about right
fair.
then.
I think that's fair. I'd probably skew a little higher, but for that being an average across reviews, that sounds right. I think I'd probably give it an 80, 85 maybe. Um, but yeah, I mean, like if your tastes line up with mine, if you like Mass Effect or Dragon Age or Deus Ex or any of those kinds of like single player story, like choose your own adventure type games, and you like the ensemble cast vibe of like a Dragon Age or a Mass Effect, and you know you loved all those moments where you'd be running around on a mission and two characters are quipping back and forth and or they're arguing about something or whatever. This game has that in spades, and it's so good. Like the moment to moment dialogue and the way that they react to everything that's going on, it feels very authentic. And one of the things that I really like about it is it's not easy to make decisions that everybody likes. Like often two characters are arguing and they're like, "What do you think, Peter?" And then you have to be like, "Fuck, what do I think?" And you have to side with somebody. And like I like that because it very much feels like actually working as part of a team where like everybody has their own ideas and we need to compromise and agree to disagree, or at some point you need to be the leader and be like, "I'm the leader, this is what we're fucking doing," like whatever. And like I like that. Like it doesn't feel like it's just like, "Oh, say the thing that'll make Rocket like you. Say the thing that'll make Gamora like you." It's more like trying to manage a team and keep people together and united when their personalities clash and conflict,
Mhm.
which as somebody who
That's
ran
cool.
a ska band, I know how to do that. So, um,
Does it feel like a band then? Because obviously you got the music stuff, you've got these interpersonal issues. Does it feel like you're a band on a
it's
mission?
got a little bit of that vibe to it. I always think of group dynamics as like a band, and it's like everybody brings their
Mhm.
own thing to the table, and it's like when we come together, we can
Have you
really.
got like the egomaniac who's on the vocals?
I feel like they're all egomaniacs except Groot. Oh man, yeah, and there's just some of the voice acting is really good. Like there's a line delivery from Groot in a moment I had yesterday where like you show up at a space station and it's like abandoned and like you're supposed to be there to like meet someone. And he like you go into a room and like how like when you're looking for someone you'll be like hello, like that kind of rhythm. Are you familiar with the fact that Groot can only say "I am Groot"?
I am familiar with that fact.
So
Yes.
like the line delivery is like "I am Groot," and I just I like choked on my laughter. It's so
That's
fucking
amazing.
funny to me. And it's very charming. It's a very fun like romp type story, and I'm really digging it. I highly recommend anybody, if you were interested in it and you were on the fence, you check it out. If anything I said struck a chord with you, I think it's a game for you, and I think it's a game I could see a lot of people sleeping on because it's been a crowded fall. So I hope you'll give it a shot because it will certainly be on my Game of the Year shortlist. So we made it just an hour. Our stream is supposed to start 3 minutes ago, so we're going to wrap this up here and go play some Mario Party with Chewy. Thank you all so much for joining us here on another episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. We really appreciate you. We appreciate our Patreon producers and all of our supporters. Y'all are the best. Thank you so much. Remember, if you want to be part of the show, just like all the fine folks did who wrote in this week, head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website. We've got links to our Discord, to our Twitter, all the places that you can keep the conversation rolling. You can write into us at questions at flipscreen.games. And again, if you want to show your support, you want to be a Patreon producer, you want to get access to One More Thing or our Twitch archive or any other cool perks that you can grab over there, head over to patreon.com/flipscreengames. It's, of course, the best way to show your support. But even if you can't do that, there are a lot of free ways you can do it. Like the video, share it with a friend, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell. If you're on the podcast, hit the subscribe, give us a 5-star review rather. There's a lot of free ways that you can help us out that won't cost you a dime, that will do a lot for us to help the show get recognized. So please do what you can. We appreciate you. Thanks again for choosing to spend your time with us, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. See you next week, babies.